You should use some of that energy of yours to go after the issue of the office buildings, the vacant offices around the city, and use them for housing. Also on the issue of housing, I'm not sure if the Taoiseach saw it, but there was a central bank report yesterday which projected that more than a quarter of Dublin office space could be vacant over the next 2 years. And this is potentially a game changer in terms of the housing crisis. It's a huge untapped resource. Total office space was estimated at 3.9 million square metres back in 2020. That's in Dublin. A quarter of that is enough space for over 20,000 apartments in Dublin. We know it can be done. It's being done in a certain way now in terms of office buildings being repurposed for accommodation for international protection applicants. Obviously that's quite overcrowded, that's not suitable for people living long term, but it shows you can convert commercial buildings into residential buildings. If we had a left government that was willing, we could take these vacant office buildings into public ownership and convert them into social and affordable housing. It also makes sense from a climate perspective. Emissions from converting existing built buildings to housing will be much lower than building housing from scratch. Offices tend to be in much more central locations, access to transport and so on, rather than in greenfield locations used for new housing estates. So instead of chasing refugees up and down the canal, you should use some of that energy of yours to go after the issue of the office buildings, the vacant offices around the city, and use them for housing.
Deputy Murphy, I haven't yet read the central bank report, but I will now that you've brought it to my attention in relation to the issue of vacant office space. We are in the business of trying to see how vacant office space can be repurposed where appropriate for iPads and the likes, and we have some examples of that already. I just want to be very clear in relation to the position on tents. It's the only rationale behind our removal of tents, and I don't even like using that phrase, but removing people from those tents is to move them to safer accommodation for them and better sanitation and humanitarian situations than they're encountering.
You were moved yesterday with nowhere to go.
I've checked that out and I was informed that wasn't the case, but I'm continuing to seek full information on that because I also had a multi-agency meeting yesterday on this, and my understanding is that there is currently a small amount of spare capacity in some of the facilities. The big thing we're working on here, being very honest, in the short term is bringing a state-owned site that's been much discussed into use, where we can provide a decent form of shelter and sanitation whilst moving to the comprehensive accommodation strategy that Minister O'Gorman is working on. But look, in the point you make about the fact that there may well end up having been built a lot of vacant office space around our city and what do we do with it is a valid one, which I'll give consideration to.